So how to transition into UX design from graphic design? This is a really good question, especially given that by 2050, it's estimated that there'll be 100 million UX design jobs. And according to Envision, as of 2018, UX designers on average make 50% more than graphic designers. Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about all the learnings and all the thought processes and all the artifacts that you'll need to transition. And we'll even talk about how to do it efficiently. Okay, so first let's define user experience design. User experience design is an iterative design process where the goal is to make something that real users derive value out of. So it's a mobile app that a user wants to use to be able to order groceries or find their way around a shopping mall, for example, right? It's made up of many activities with different stakeholders using different technologies. Let's talk about the activities first. User research, which is the idea of understanding the context in which users are using an application. It is analyzing user research findings. It's also information architecture, so it's modeling the digital application, website, app into a way that users can understand. That includes labeling information, organizing information, and structuring information on the page itself. It's user interface design as another activity, which is how do we create an experience using color, typography, gestalt, space, so on and so forth, to make something that strikes an emotional experience that the brand would like to communicate to their customers. And with that, how do we use those visual design principles to make something that users can easily use? It facilitates their flow through the application. It's also the activity of prototyping, right? How do we make something just enough so it's testable, so we don't put too much time into a user interface, we don't invest too much of our labor and resources. We just make the most simple iteration of that and put that out into the real world, test it, get feedback, build upon it so we can design smartly. The different stakeholders, you're working with front-end developers, right? You're working with back-end developers, you're working with product managers, maybe you're working with marketing folks, and of course you're working with users, you're getting user feedback. Some applications may have multiple users, right? Technologies, so we're talking hardware, right? What are you building for? Are you building for mobile, VR, AR, voice, desktop, right? How about software? Are you building something with a CMS, a content management system, right? WordPress or Drupal or Gatsby, right? There are limitations with that at the software level too. It's a lot, and it can easily be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. So the first thing to keep in mind is that you don't have to know most of that. UX design is still a new medium, right? There's new methodologies of doing things constantly emerging. So what was the tried and true method maybe a year ago, this year there's another way of doing things. That goes from user research, that goes into information architecture and user interface design. There's new ways of approaching user interface design constantly emerging. The single truth though across all the years is that it's a process of trial and error. Think of user interface design as a set of experiments. You have a hypothesis about what you think would be a good design, a good interface that would let users easily complete their tasks. You put that out into the real world. You monitor, you observe users, you take notes on the feedback that you're getting, and you go back to the drawing board, you make another hypothesis. You get the feedback, you make another hypothesis, and it's ongoing for infinity, right? There's no perfect UI, it's an ongoing process. The second thing to keep in mind is that depending on where in the UX design process you want to be, you can reduce the amount of learning you have to do significantly. For example, instead of having to learn 80% of UX material, you could just learn 20% of it. We can split UX into two main categories. It's a very general description, but I think it's okay, especially for larger companies, right? So we can think of user experience design as being part user experience / information architecture, right? And that's concerned with the strategy and scope of the interface. So what are we designing and who are we designing it for? We could also split it into interface design, user interface design, which is the look and feel and the personality that we want to convey through the interface. So if you know whether you want to fall within the user experience design category or within the user interface design category, you could just focus your learning as appropriate. We may do a future video where we talk about the different verticals within UX. If you're unsure at this time where you want to focus your efforts, we suggest starting within the user interface design portion, right? So maybe look for gigs that are user interface design centric. This way you would only have to learn 20% of the research and information architecture material. If you're interested in getting a broad understanding of UX, check out the video we did on the 5 books to study to learn UX. The third thing is that as a graphic designer, you come to UX design knowing a lot. Right? When I started in UX design, I came from project management, and I felt very confident doing the upfront portion of user experience design where I was writing user flows, interviewing users, interpreting user requirements, and translating them into some sort of structure. When it came time to create the look and feel of the interface, to brand the interface, I felt a lot more insecure in my abilities, and I would actually hand off a lot of work to my UX design counterparts that were good in that portion. As a graphic designer, you come in with the visual design skills, and you could supplement the skills within a team. Let's say a team doesn't have UX designers that are very versed in the graphic design portion, the visual design portion. That's where you come in to help them. The second thing is you come with a lot of collaboration skills, right? You've worked with stakeholders. You might have even worked with some users in a, let's say, market research setting when you got feedback about how what you're putting out into the world is received. You've also worked in an iterative setting. Let's say you're designing a logo, you would send a top-level sketch, or maybe you'd send a mood board or some ideas over to the client. You'd do a temperature check. They'd give you their feedback, and then you'd use that to create some concepts. You send the concepts over. They give you another, some more feedback. You take that and you iterate over it again. So you have that iterative understanding already. Here's what you should plan to have in order to start making your transition into UX design. Right? These are the materials that you should prepare. Firstly, a portfolio. Right? So you'll be familiar with a portfolio most likely with your graphic design experience. You've probably done some work for a client, or rather you started a conversation with a client about some work that you want to do, and they asked you for previous work that you've done. And then you've taken your work and you've shared it with them. That's essentially a portfolio. You want a group of your projects in an easy way that you can send to prospective employers or prospective clients. Some tips on a portfolio preparation. You want 3 to 5 projects. That's more than enough to get across to your prospective clients, etc. Your user experience design chops. Right? You want your portfolio to say a couple things. You want it to show that you have collaborative skills. You want it to show that you have, or you understand that UX design is about iteration. Right? You want to show that you have user interface design skills, right? So you can make something that's usable, and you understand the mechanics of color typography. That will actually come very easy to you. And so you want your portfolio to show the thinking of your design, not just the final artifact, right? It's not like graphic design in the sense that it's not just, here's what I designed, here's the final business card, here's the final flyer. It's more like, here's the thought process that took me from a hypothesis to the final design, and here were the results. It worked with users, or it worked in these cases, but there's some more work to be done. What we'll do is we'll put a few example portfolios in the description so you could take a look and just study the portfolios a little bit, spend a little time with them, and try to get a sense of what kind of projects you can take on. In terms of finding projects, here's a couple ideas. You can, maybe you have a friend that's interested in user experience design, right? Maybe you can collaborate with them. Maybe your friend's interested in the more strategy and scoping phase, and you're interested in the visual design phase, and you could team up. They could provide you with user data or requirements, and you could help create the designs. They could put the designs in front of users. You could iterate on the designs. You kind of form a team of sorts. You could take a look at your favorite brands or your favorite applications, and you can get a sense of maybe don't just redesign them, right? Let's say you have a favorite app. One of my favorite apps is the Notes app for iOS, right? I wouldn't just, if I wanted to put that on my portfolio, I wouldn't just redesign it. I would put some thinking as to what I don't like about it. What are the facets of it that make my experience poor? Take it even a step further, maybe I could ask other users what their experience is with the application, right? Do they share some frustrations that I share? And then I would redesign it based off that. This way I'm basing my design off some real tangible user value. Another idea is to do pro bono work. Maybe you have local restaurants, local grocery stores, your accountant, right? Maybe your dentist or doctor. You can go to them. You could ask them if you can help build their website. Now you're working directly with a client, right? And they'll give you the requirements, and you take a guess, you share it with them, and now you're in that iterative design process. I think for the first 6 months, you should plan to do design work that is for free, and just build up a repertoire of projects. One thing to add is the nice thing about working with real clients is that you can try to get testimonials for your work. So it'd be cool if on your portfolio with every project you're listing out testimonials and real feedback from customers about how you did. So the second thing you'll need to prepare is a resume. So this is pretty straightforward. Just keep it super simple, make it very readable. Third thing to prepare is how you're going to position yourself in the market, right? So is your title going to be user experience designer? Is it going to be product designer, right? Is it going to be user interface designer or visual designer? You'll have a better sense over time of where you want to position yourself, but what to keep in mind is you want to position yourself based on what the market is looking for at the time. Like right now, I've noticed product designer starting to emerge as a title that a lot of big companies are using. Right, so at the time that you're ready to start submitting your portfolio and resume to companies, just take a look at Apple's website, take a look at Google, Netflix, so on. Look at these big companies' job boards and see how they categorize the different user experience design roles and position yourself appropriately. A few parting notes. Take a look at Apple and Android's user interface design guidelines. It'll give you a good sense of the user interface design components that you'll ultimately be designing as you learn to practice and put together your portfolio. The second thing is jot down these keywords: interaction design, usability, jobs to be done. You do some light reading on these topics. It will supplement your graphic design experience really well. And the last thing is strive for 70% confidence as you learn the material. The UX design industry is rapidly changing. A lot of new insights and materials is emerging every day. I still get imposter syndrome myself sometimes. So when you feel 70% confident that you understand a topic, move on to the next one. Your goal is to put together a portfolio and start the application process. If you have any questions or comments about the transition into UX design, please leave them in the comments below.